You smell that? Those are demos. Love the smell of demos in the morning. Means there's some cool stuff on the horizon. Apocalypse Now references aside, it's next best time, y'all! That's right, it's the most wonderful time of the season, and over the last 5 or so days, I've looked at some pretty neat demos that I think will be shaking out awesome. I'm only going to include the 3 that impressed me the most because I'd be here all day, but I will give a special shout out to Stormgate by Frost Giant Games. Frost Giant Games is made up of a huge chunk of Blizzard's old RTS team, so it was a fun time. But because of how the open beta test went, I couldn't get any footage for it because I could not get it to show up in OBS no matter what I tried. But other than that, let's get this show on the road! Go! Do you see this? Do you see this nonsense happening on screen right now? This is Mullet Jack. This right here is a roguelike, themed as an OVA FPS. That wording is used specifically because, well, look at it. This shit is 80s/90s anime as fuck, and it's done in a loving homage way while also being a first-person shooter. In the future of the 2090s, humans and the internet have merged so thoroughly that it's led to robot billionaires taking over the world. Fittingly called robillionaires, they have made it so there's a new breed of human that needs a steady supply of dopamine every 10 goddamn seconds. Otherwise, they straight up die. Oh, and there's a megacorporation called Peace Corp that employs these dopamine-starved individuals to kill the robots in a profession called moderation. And it's live-streamed online to the masses who determine how much dopamine you get. And you take up a contract to save a social media influencer. One of my biggest issues with cyberpunk as a genre of fiction is that after the 1980s, it never really kept up with the times. All the stuff I just mentioned, while filtered through late 80s and early 90s anime aesthetics, is stingingly prescient in terms of highlighting how ridiculous social media as a concept is, and as someone with ADHD, that bit about the dopamine chase feels like a personal attack, and I'll be getting my lawyer on the phone about this. Not really, but I love how the demo lulls you into this false sense of security about being a wild FPS roguelike that's anime as fuck, but then hits you with the commentary and satire about society's relationship with social media and the internet as a means of control, and this is the kind of shit that I live for. Enough about how it looks or what the narrative is doing. Time for that slice of gameplay that they show off. Mullet Jack is, like the opening mentioned, an FPS roguelike. And while you may be tempted to think shooter of the boomer variety, it's more so that it's inspired by games like Doom Eternal and Neon White. Which is to say, kill stuff at blindingly fast speeds, in the case of the latter, to possibly beat your friends on the leaderboards. On the normal difficulty setting, at least, the game gives you the aforementioned 10-second time limit. The way you kill enemies determines how much time you get back on the timer, which is also effectively your health bar. Regular weapon kills give you 3 seconds, environmental kills give you 4 seconds, melee kills augmented with items found laying around that turn your melee into a Doom-style glory kill give you all your time back, and soda's drinking soda. That's right, you get dopamine from soda, and that's a goddamn mood. You then proceed to rip and tear your way across 20 levels of an apartment complex that get more and more fiendish in difficulty. Some bits break up the flow a bit. When you get to the 10th floor, which was the end of the first chapter, we lost signal and were disconnected from the internet, making us not reliant on speed kills to get a dopamine rush to not die. Which is helpful because there was a goddamn boss fight in this floor. This is where more of the new Doom influence came into effect, and I was more focused on jumping, shooting, and dodging to kill the boss at hand. This feels like a good preview of what Mullet Jack is going. While it does satire well from what I've seen, it, ironically enough, does provide me with a good rush of dopamine. It makes me hyper-focused to the point of making me go through the demo and then immediately starting it back up. I would try to go in and get through as much of it as possible, die, and then go again. It was wild. There's even a difficulty slider that gives you more or less time to futz with. Hell, there's even a leisure mode that gets rid of the timer entirely to make it more of a traditional FPS campaign. Either way, it's got you covered. Mullet Jack is probably the standard of the next best for me because it just grabbed my brain and wouldn't let go. It's a demo I've played the most, and I cannot wait to see the full game in action. heard about this one before the next fest went live because I saw the trailer and went, yo, this looks wild. And I was correct in assuming so. Children of the Sun is a tactical puzzle shooter developed by solo developer Renee Rother that is being published by Devolver Digital. They have a pretty good track record when it comes to scouting out great games, and surprise, surprise, they found another potential hit. Children of the Sun is a simple story of a young woman going on a vengeful killing spree against a cult that ruined her life. That's some goddamn tonal whiplash compared to the last entry on this list. But that's the reason we came to this channel, for a dude talking about the stuff he likes about video games and the occasional bit of religious trauma. It's a treat. Okay, now that we've made the failed attempt to defuse the situation, let's talk about the actual demo. You start on the outskirts of the areas where the cultists are gathered. From there, you use the mouse to go left or right to circle the area for a good line of sight and determine where to go. From there, you can mark targets and zoom in. And from there, you can fire your weapon, and this is where shit gets spicy. When you start each level, you only start with a single bullet. This is mainly because you take control of the bullet from the first kill. You then transition into a slow-motion tracking field to find the poor cultist schmucks running away from their compatriot that just got unalived, and you gotta make the quickest path to making sure they all go to the great cult meeting in the sky. And the entire demo is predicated on this simple yet unique form of puzzle solving. They then immediately introduced new ways of iterating on these concepts, like sniping the fuel tanks on cars to make them explode and kill groups of cultists, or shooting the bullet through fire to make it deal increased damage, and so on and so forth. And even as early as the third level, it makes it so that you have to use everything you've learned and just throws you into the deep end. I don't mind this because the demo's design trusts that the player is in fact smart enough to figure it out, which this footage is doing a particularly bad job of showcasing. Part of what makes this extra special, aside from the exaggerated example of one shot, one kill, is that there's a goddamn leaderboard as well. And that alone has me going, well, guess I'm obsessing over this. And when I went back to the levels that I was stuck on, I felt like I had my third eye open. I just figured out new and interesting paths to get cultists killed, and it was so good. To look back to the story real fast, it shows more and more of what the woman and her family went through with the cultists, and it's both a good manner of showing how she ended up this way, and they're also deeply fucked up. Children of the Sun is shaping up to be a great murder-themed puzzler through its unique premise, smart use of level layout, and iterative game design, on top of devilishly difficult puzzle design. This is one to keep an eye on. This next one is a bit different from the others. Tales of Kenzara Zao is a Metroidvania developed by Surgeon Studios under the EA Originals banner. Surgeon Games was founded by actor Abu Bakr Salim after his work on Assassin's Creed Origins gave him a greater insight into the game development process. With that out of the way, there's a part that has a greater emphasis than the other games shown here, and that's the narrative. The demo for Tales of Kenzara Zao showcases the titular Zao in grief over the passing of his father, taking up his mantle as a Naganga, a spirit healer. After making his presence an objective to bring his father back from the dead known to Kalunga, the god of death, he agrees to help him under the condition that Zao help him bring back 3 greater spirits. The narrative on display so far is heavily inspired by Bantu tales and informed by Salim's own experience over grieving his father's death. Nowhere is this more apparent than in his performance as Zao. Zao is singularly focused on his goal to the point of recklessness, and his dynamic with Kalunga is shown to be somewhat antagonistic at the start because of this. While this does soften somewhat throughout the demo, that slight antagonism is an undercurrent of all their interactions, and this combined with Kalunga's seeing of the big picture, so to speak, makes for a good dynamic between these two characters and serves as a good preview of the writing on display. There's also a good preview of the gameplay here as well. Zao, being a spirit healer slash shaman, is shown in play by his use of the dual masks of the gods of the sun and the moon. The moon focuses on ranged attacks and freezing enemies, and the sun focuses on slashing and lighting enemies on fire. The combat starts simply by shooting the enemies with the moon mask, but once you get the sun mask, it opens up. You can mix and match from shooting and slashing by swapping masks on the fly, and eventually get new powers that can deal with multiple enemies at once. While what was shown was on the simple side, Tales of Kenzara Zao has a promising combat system on its hands, and this is before getting into the skill trees that appear to be developed for the masks as well. The other half of the gameplay in Zao is the traversal and platforming. Zao can run, jump, dash, double jump, wall jump, and slide to traverse the environments. You use these to get around the environments and do some exploration and light puzzle solving. This is expanded upon further by the use of new powers that I assume you get as the story goes on. The only one of these that you get in the demo is the ability to freeze objects, a previously mentioned combat ability, to completely freeze over running in rapid water, make it easier to traverse areas and even climb up to spots where you couldn't before. There's even some optional exploration to go off the beaten path and to get more skill points and other hidden goodies. It's good stuff. As a small slice, Tales of Kenzara is a nice taste of what the full game is going to go for when it comes out. And you don't need to wait that long because this one is coming out in roughly 2 months at the time of writing. I'm also keeping an eye on this one. These are just 3 of the games that stuck out to me over the course of last week, and I highlighted Mullet Jack, Children of the Sun, and Tales of Kenzara with the specific fact that even though the next fest is done for the time being, you can still download and give these demos a spin. So I recommend you do that because they're all awesome. This has been the Winter Steam Next Fest for 2024, and I'll see you in this style of roundup in a few months, and we'll definitely see you in the next video. If you've made it this far, thank you very much, and if you would kindly leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, it would help me out a ton. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.